We need to introduce our speaker and our topic tonight. So our dove season starts on Friday, and I know that I've got a few dove hunting spots picked out, and I'll bet you many of you also do. But what if you're like me and you actually bring like 2 or 3 boxes of shells for a dove hunt, and you need those to get your limit? I think my captain knows all too well my tendency of a lot of shooting and not a lot of getting. So we thought it would be perfect timing to bring in a special guest that can shed some light on how to be a better shotgunner and to give tips for guys like me. So our presenter tonight is Rick Kagawa. Rick's a lifetime hunter. He's a certified hunter education instructor with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. He competes in shotgun events throughout the nation. He's a member of the National Shotgunning Clay Association. He also is a NRA instructor who actually teaches and instructs NRA instructors in all types of disciplines. He's the shooting sports chairman for the Boy Scouts. He's got a wealth of experience. So Rick, take it away. Thanks for being here with us tonight. We need your expertise, and I personally need your expertise.
That's a problem. That's a promise, Eric. We'll get you all in there.
All right.
Good evening, everybody. I'm excited to be here. You're listening to one of my favorite things in the whole world to talk about, which is hunting and shooting shotguns. So we can get moving forward. And my name is Rick Kagawa. Thank you for being here tonight. Come on. There. Okay, we're going to start out. This is a hunter ed class, so we're going to start out with a safety talk, a couple safety pitches that we want to make sure everybody follows and knows. The three main safety rules: always keep your gun pointed in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. Always keep the gun unloaded till you're ready to shoot. Of these three, they're the always, always, always rules, or the three always. I would say that number one's probably the most important. And the reason I say that is if your gun's pointed in a safe direction and you get a negligent discharge, what happens? You may break something, you may shoot something you don't want to shoot, but it won't be a person. So that's why I always want to make sure that everybody points the gun in a safe direction. And at all times, whether you think it's loaded or not, keep your finger off the trigger and always keep the gun loaded till you're ready to shoot. Now, this is a diagram or a picture of what they call the zone of fire for bird hunting. Surprisingly, more people get shot bird hunting, I think, than any other form of hunting because of the zones of fire. And if you look, the center person has just a V in front of them. The person on the right has everything from the right side, and the person on the left has everything from the left side. So bird hunting safety is a key factor to safe gun hunting. And the other thing about this diagram is, look, they're standing in a line walking across a field. If one of those hunters gets ahead, the other zone of fire decreases dramatically, and you have to be aware of the other person. So always make sure that you're always sure of your zones of fire. The other thing that I always tell people that's not in the zones of fire rule: when you're hunting in a field, just don't shoot anything that is below your head height. It's just kind of a safety rule that makes sense to me. And if you don't shoot anything below head height, you probably won't shoot another person. Unless you're shooting on hills and valleys and stuff, that's always possible. But again, zones of fire, and try not to shoot anything lower than your head height if you're in a flat field. So that's the safety message for the whole webinar. Oh, by the way, if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat, and at some point Eric will tell me, let's take a stop, and I'll take some of the questions if there's any questions that you guys have that are relevant questions. All right, we're going to talk first about what hunting license do you need for what type of hunting, because in bird hunting, there's multiple different types of hunting, and or shotgun hunting, you need to know the differences of what license are required in the state of California. So to hunt rabbit and squirrel, you only require a hunting license. And the good part about rabbit and squirrel season is generally they're a lot longer than bird season. So if in late July or August you want to go hunting, you can still shoot rabbits and I don't know when squirrel season, but I know rabbit season occurs in the middle of July. So if you're in August and you want to go hunting and there's nothing else that you can shoot with a shotgun, you can go cottontail or jackrabbit hunting. So that's always something to remember. So it extends your hunting season so you can go have fun out in the outdoors. Now, this is the one that most people know about, is upland game hunting. And it requires a California hunting license plus an upland game stamp. So if you want to hunt quail, dove, chukar, turkey, band-tailed pigeon, or pheasant, you need to have an upland game stamp. Those are considered upland game. So you need to remember that when you're hunting these birds, that and the most surprising one is a turkey, because turkey's so stinking big, but it's still considered upland game. So you're still required to have the upland game stamp along with a regular hunting license. The last one is waterfowl. Waterfowl include ducks, geese, coots, gallinule. There's anything that has that floats or lives around water, snipe. They require your regular California hunting license, a federal waterfowl stamp, and a state waterfowl stamp are the three requirements for going hunting for waterfowl. So if that's helpful, because it's a little confusing, because it doesn't just take a hunting license to be able to hunt with a shotgun. So the first question everybody asks, especially new hunters, is where do I go hunting? And of course, we are blessed in the United States with having probably, especially in the West, unbelievable tracts of land that we can actually hunt on that's public land. I have friends in the East Coast, and a lot of the land back there is all bought up and private. So you really have to figure out a way to, there's not a lot of public land hunting, but in the West, we're just blessed with these gargantuan lands of tracts of big property that we can go hunt. And so the public lands are Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management land. Those two are the largest landholders in the Western United States. So that opens up a ton of property for hunting. Now, of course, you still have to have, the correct stamps and all that stuff to do it. But nonetheless, those two are, and the other one that I found out that was really interesting is that in the Owens Valley, which is Bishop down to Ridgecrest, a lot of that land is owned by the Department of Water and Power, Los Angeles, because they bought all the property in the 1920s, the whole Mulholland project. And they own a lot of the land in Owens Valley. Well, most of the land that does not have buildings on it, Department of Water and Power happily will let you hunt on their property as long as you're not hunting from a road or you're not hunting around buildings. They really don't bother you too much about hunting. So that's another resource that's possible. And for public lands, if you've never heard of Onyx and you want to hunt on public lands, it's probably your best $30 investment you can ever have. I have the Onyx website about hunt listed up here on my screen. But Onyx is your friend. It will tell you that you have a strip 100 yards wide and 40 yards long that you can hunt on. It'll tell you that, and it will show where you're standing. You can mark pieces of property on it. It is fabulous piece of software if you really want to learn how to hunt and where to hunt. And you'll know for sure you're hunting on public land when you're using Onyx, because it tells you where you are and it shows you on a map. Now, there are private land opportunities in California, and I use the dollar signs like Yelp does to tell you how expensive it is. Private land hunting, the most fun one is California Fish and Wildlife has hunt drawings that you can go hunt chukar, quail, turkey, and doves on Department of Fish and Wildlife land, or their share reservation system. You can hunt on private farms that are allowing hunters from California to put in for a lottery. I think the application for lottery is anywhere between $2.40 or something like that to like $13 for the really deluxe ones. But yes, there are share hunts, there are public land drawings at Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'm so excited. I won my first public land drawing for dove hunting this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. Day hunting rights. There are landowners that will allow you to pay through guides sometimes not, but you just kind of got to root these resources out. But they will allow you to hunt like dove and quail and chukar on their property for like $150 to $250 a day, depending on how good the hunting is. And they're anywhere from Santa Barbara. I've heard places in Santa Barbara. I know places in Paso Robles. I know that there's places up above Sacramento and up by Lake Berryessa that have day hunting rights. You just need to kind of root them out online. You can find them. A lot of them are guided or have guides that lease the property and then sell the rights for the day use of hunting. There are wildlife clubs that you can join that are kind of like the day use, except it's for a year and you pay a membership, and they have multiple properties that you can hunt on up and down the state. My observation is usually $2,000 to $3,000 a year for the hunting wildlife clubs, but you get multiple sites. A lot of times you can fish on the property if there's water, and it's kind of like a private country club, except it's connected ranches that are connected through this one system that you can get hunting rights on, but relatively expensive, not only but constant every year expense. Indian reservation land. This is the one that there are plenty of Indian reservations that will let you hunt on their land all across the state, and you just need to find out which Indian property you can hunt on. I know I've hunted out of Havasu City, and that's an Indian property out there that on the California side of Lake Havasu. I've hunted out there before. So, but it's relatively cheap. The hunting rights are anywhere between $35, $40 to as much as $60 or $70, but not real hard, and for dove hunting and quail hunting and chukar hunting is probably a pretty good option. I can't think of many places that they do turkey, but there are options there maybe. Anyway, and private land hunts, that's the creme de la creme. Private land hunts, you can go and you get guided hunting. A real famous one in Southern California is the Tejon Ranch. And but I mean, to give you an example, I hunted turkey last year, and I think it was $1,300 for a 2-day guided hunt. So they're not cheap, and that did not include anything but the guide and the hunting. So that's kind of the way that goes. But private land hunting, and one of the things you'll find, especially things like turkey and even quail and quail sometimes, the hunted, and even, I'll tell you, and pigs especially. But if you're hunting public lands, they get hunted pretty hard generally, and the problem is us hunting those lands pushes the animal off public lands into private property. So private property has a lot more game than public lands. So just remember that anytime there's public hunting, there's a lot more pressure, and because of the pressure, the game tends to move out of the area. So just remember that. Now, we are a state that you have to shoot non-toxic shot, which is no lead. So, and this becomes super confusing with shotguns, because there's multiple different types of projectiles that can be used, different types of elements, and because of that, they affect the firearms differently. So non-toxic shock is a very interesting subject, but complex subject in its own right. So I'll try to get that through. I want to stop a second. Eric, do you see any questions in the chat that should be looked at?
No questions so far.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll let you know, Rick.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. So everybody knows about steel. The good about it is it's cheap. It's slightly more expensive than lead, but it's cheap to buy. The bad is that it's very light compared to lead, and it's super hard compared to lead. I don't know if you've ever seen lead shot that's been shot through a shotgun. Some of the pellets end up being like hexagons and all different kind of oddball shapes, because as it goes to the choke, the lead compresses and changes shape because it's soft. Well, with steel, it's not soft, and so it's so hard that when you shoot a steel load, you have to loosen up your choke to get the same choke. So the example is, if you're going to shoot, you want to shoot a full choke with steel, you use a modified choke, a lead modified choke. So a modified choke that's made for lead is what you use for a full choke for steel. So everything's dropped one constriction up. So everything's bigger for steel than it is for lead, because the lead does not compress. Bismuth. Bismuth is real good. It's heavier than steel. The other thing with steel is you have to be careful which guns you shoot it through, because some of the older guns, it will hurt them. And just kind of a rule of thumb, anything before 1930, maybe even 1940, I would take it to a gunsmith and ask them if I can shoot lead through it, steel through it, because steel is hard on the chokes, and a lot of the old guns were choked full, and I would not shoot steel through a full choke gun. It may destroy the gun. It may hurt the barrel. So I would not shoot steel through a full choke. So anyway, bismuth is good. It's heavier than steel. It's kind of soft like lead. And I say kind of soft because one of the bad parts is if you take a bismuth shot and hit it with a hammer, it crumbles, and it actually acts like powder or rock, and it crumbles. And the other side, if you buy like this box of bismuth shot here for geese, if you buy this box of bismuth shot, I probably tell you it's probably $2.50 to $3 per shell. So that's pretty expensive to shoot. So you're not going to go dove hunting with bismuth generally. And I actually reload my own bismuth to keep costs down. And even for me, just reloading, it's still $1.50 to $2 a shot. So, but the good part is the choke is the same as lead. It's soft enough that it conforms a little bit when it goes to the choke, and you can shoot it through older guns. It's the one saving grace that if you want to shoot grandpa's heirloom and you want to shoot waterfowl or upland game in California, bismuth is your game. So just so you know that. Now, in the last, I'd say I haven't seen TSS except probably the last 5 to 10 years. But the reason I put a tungsten turkey shot out there is because that's what most people use it for. It's primarily used for turkeys. TSS is a godsend. It's non-toxic. It's heavier than steel. It's heavier than lead. So that's an awesome fact that it's heavier than lead, and it will kill. And you use much smaller shot. Like a lot of times, the shot on a turkey load, most people shooting lead will use 4s to 6s for turkey with lead if they're shooting outside of the state. And with tungsten, it's so heavy you can shoot number 9s at turkey. Little tiny, lots of BBs, but boy, tiny, but it's heavy. And but the bad part is it's costs like shooting gold. That's the best description I can think about it. It's way harder than steel, and it costs like shooting gold. That box sitting right there of tungsten shot is probably $72 to $80 for 5 shots, five rounds. So it's about 12, maybe even more, $12 to $15 per shot. So, and there are, if you go turkey hunting, which is most people use tungsten for, they have special turkey chokes that are extra full, made for shooting tungsten through. So if you have a choke tube in your gun and you want to shoot it through, you want to shoot a really tight choke with TSS, you can buy special chokes made for tungsten shot that are super tight. So, but yeah, tungsten's an interesting animal, and boy, is it expensive. Heavy shot is the combination of both steel and bismuth most of the time. Occasionally you'll see tungsten, but it doesn't sell real well because of cost. A lot of waterfowlers will use the heavy shot. You'll see it on the, there's actually a company called Heavy Shot that developed the blended mixes, and you shoot heavy shot just like heavy shot just like you would shoot steel. So if you want a full choke with heavy shot, you use a modified choke, lead modified choke. So that's the difference. Let's see here next. Oh, so again, I want to reiterate it. If you have a gun with a fixed choke, you don't have screw-in chokes, and you have a full choke, don't shoot steel through it, or tungsten, or heavy shot through it. You will. It's not a good idea. It's just generally rule that is modified is the highest choke you probably shoot with steel, except unless you're shooting TSS with a special turkey chokes. And so you want to make sure that you're using the correct choke, because if your choke's too tight, it may hurt your gun. But besides that, you may be missing birds because you don't have the correct pattern. You may be shooting birds at 20 yards with a full choke. So you want to make sure that you're doing that right. So steel shot sizes. Most of you are probably going to use steel, and steel shot sizes. This is a general rule. I'm going to tell you that some people have some different preferences, but for steel shot, 6s and 7s are good for dove, quail, rabbit, squirrel, and chucker. And the only exception I would make to that is I may say that chucker, you may want to go down to 5s, because they're pretty tough birds when you're shooting chucker, and you may want to use a little bigger shot than a 6 or 7. And they're good to about 40 to 45 yards. Steel does not shoot like lead or like tungsten or bismuth, and you will wound birds if you go out past about 45 yards. But you'll have to see. Not everybody can judge how far a bird is away. Anyway, pheasant, they use number 4 to number 5 shot, good to 40, 45 yards is a general rule. You may knock them down further than that, but I think ethical hunting says that you don't want to wound animals, and if you can help it, you just don't want to, you just don't want to wound an animal and have it die in the woods and not have it as game. And it's just a waste. Ducks, tend to be bigger, so it's size 3 to 4, good to about 40 yards, maybe a little further. Goose is exactly the same. BB shot to number 3s, good to 40 yards with steel. Turkeys, number 4, good to about 40, 45 yards, maybe 50, but I would say that's a tough one. I'd say not over 45. And TSS, you're good to about 60 yards. I've even seen turkeys taken 7 yards with TSS with number 7. And a lot of the TSS loads you'll find are 7s or 9s or a combination of the 2 shot sizes. So you just need to look what I don't really care. They've all work good. So now that we've covered a lot of the technical side of shooting, now we're going to talk about how to shoot shotguns, because shotguns are a little different animal than most people understand. Most people understand a rifle with a scope, or a rifle with sights on it, or a pistol with sights on it that you line up the front blade with the rear sight. And how do you aim a shotgun? Well, the shotgun, the best way I can describe it is your front sight is the front of the barrel or the bead, but your backside is your eye. So where your eye is and what you look and all that really matters. So fitting a shotgun is super important. I'm going to base this on clays because bird hunting is pretty inconsistent but clay shooting, you can always know it's going to come out of that thrower or behind that bush or underneath the clay is going to come out. So, and they get thrown pretty consistently. So you can test and work your system to be able to, but if you don't know how to shoot a shotgun and you go on bird hunting, you're wasting your time. You need to go to the clays range and polish up before you go, and even go a couple times before you go to make sure that you're confident that you can hit a bird safely for the bird, because you want to kill it dead. We don't want any wounded animals. So that's ethical hunting. So which choke do I use? So let's talk about this. This is for steel shot. There's, you notice I don't have any more than a modified choke in there. The cylinder is no choke. So 15 to 25 yards is good range for cylinder. Skeet is a slight constriction above a cylinder, 20 yards to 30 yards. Improved cylinder 30 to 40 yards, and modified 35 to 45 yards at a max. That'll give you some ideas of what you should use for steel or TSS shot. Bismuth, you use regular lead sizes, but this will give you some idea of how you should set your shotgun up for how far you think the birds are. If it's quail, it may be no more than 30 yards, because you may be shooting in a tight forest, or grouse in a tight forest. You're just not going to shoot that far, so you want a big enough pattern to knock down the bird. And so that helps to have which correct choke you have in your gun. So going back to clay shooting, when you're clay shooting, the clay is going to come to a place that it's going to be the perfect place to break. And there's we're going to show you videos about this, but the clay will get to a point that it's the perfect place to break a clay. And you'll know when it's usually if it's a rising clay, it's usually at the peak. Sometimes if it's a crossing clay, it may be when it's flat, when the trajectory is flat. Anyway, you're going to find a place that you call the break point. Your foot position, the biggest mistake I see in shooting shotguns is most people use their foot position like a rifle. If the target is downrange and you drew a line from both of their toes, it would go directly to the target. Well, that's great for a rifle, but a rifle is a stationary target. We're talking about a moving target. So my suggestion is foot position is take a position where your feet are perpendicular to where the target is going to be. Your toes are lined up. Take your front foot, step back 1 footprint, and put your toe where your heel was, and you'll be in the correct position for a shotgun, so that you don't, because if you stand with your toes parallel or perpendicular to the target, what happens is if you start swinging past the target, your body starts binding up, and it pulls the shotgun down. You can't make a smooth move. So the best way to do it is take that front foot and move it back 1 footprint. Put the toe where the heel of the shoe was, and that's the perfect position. So you'll be open, and if you have to shoot, you have to twist further, you'll still be able to hit the clay or hit the bird. Viewpoint is where you first see the clay, and that's kind of the reason there's definition there, is because remember, clays are going to be consistently coming from the same place, and so the viewpoint is where you see the clay. Look at the viewpoint. Don't look down your barrel and call pull, because if you're looking down your barrel, you're not looking at the clay. When you're clay shooting or bird shooting, you never look at the barrel. You know where it is because it's in your peripheral vision, but you never look at the barrel. If you've ever been shooting at a clays range and somebody says your gun's stopping, well, the reason your gun's stopping is because you're checking the distance between the clay and the barrel, looking down the barrel, and that causes the barrel to stop. So and there's a video about that too in here, about you never look at the barrel. Just look at where you're going to see the bird, or look at the bird, and the barrel will be out there because you can point at it with your finger and you'll be able to see it. So anyway, remember, look at the bird, look at the clay. So we got to the video part. Let's get out of this and go to this. I've got it all set up. All right, so let's get this one right here, and this right here, and then start it. Okay, here you go, guys.
Here's a shooting tip. that can improve your scores. Hi, I'm Doug Painter with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. You know, pro golfers, when they tee it up, don't just boom it somewhere down the fairway. They always pick a target, a distant tree, a bunker, and hit to that spot. You know, what the eyes visualize, the body tends to do. That's a great tip if you're a shotgunner. On a sporting clays course, for example, always watch the flight path of your target and pick a spot where you want to break that bird. For example, with crossing or quartering away targets, pick a spot where that bird is reaching its maximum height, but before it begins to tail away. Let's take a look. Paul? The same holds true with incoming targets. Don't wait too long, because when that bird loses speed, it'll drop like a stone. Paul? Once you've picked that spot, align your leading foot, that's the left foot for righties, in that direction. This gives you a nice central pivot point that allows you to swing easily from your hold point, accelerate through your break point, and follow through. So, pick a spot where you want to break a target and align yourself to it. Try this tip next weekend at a gun club near you. And if you're looking for a place to shoot, visit our website, wheretoshoot.org. And remember, firearm safety depends on you.
All right, let's see here. The next one I'm going to share is about not watching the barrel. So the first thing he tells you is to watch the barrel, and you'll hear what he says after that. But yeah, you just want to keep your eye on the bird or the clay and never look down the barrel.
When I teach beginners how to shoot a shotgun, I tell them to mount the gun, look so they can see flat down the rib and see the bead sticking up. Then I tell them, never look at that bead again. The reason there are beads on shotguns is not so that you've got a sight to aim at the target. The bead on a shotgun is there to help you see the barrel in your peripheral vision, so that you keep your tight focus on the target, and that bead is there just to give you some muzzle awareness. Bright beads like this orange bead here can come in really handy in duck hunting. When it's dark, when you can't see very well, and you want to be able to keep track of that barrel as you're looking at the target. If you go to a big sporting clays shoot, you'll see maybe half the shooters might have these beads. Other half might have taken them off their guns and thrown them away because they don't want to be distracted. It really depends on you and your shooting style. But the idea of the bead is not to look at it. The way a bead can make you miss is by pulling your eye off the target and onto the bead. As soon as you look at the gun stops, you miss behind. As long as your eye is on the target and the bead is helping you move the gun to the right place, it'll help you make the shot.
Duck Gun is presented by Mossberg Firearms. Built rugged, proudly American.
All right, the last one is about when you shoot a shotgun. I guess the best thing I can describe it to, somebody told me that hockey players, when they're skating on the ice, they never skate where the puck is, they skate where the puck's going to be. Well, clays and shooting birds is exactly the same thing. People get very intimidated by the fact they have to pull the trigger in midair. This video that I'm going to show you is a visual picture of the red dot is actually where the shotgun is pointing, and you can see the shot. That when he pulls the trigger, you'll see the gun react. When he pulls the trigger, the barrel's pointing ahead of the clay. And this is just to show you that sometimes I've shot dove where I've led that dove by 4 to 6 feet because it's hauling butt directly across from me at a 90-degree angle, and I just have to cut it off, but you can't shoot at it. You have to shoot ahead of it. This is, in my opinion, this is the primary reason that the average dove is to shoot the average dove takes over 5 rounds per hunter. And I know that sporting clays shooters that shoot clays all the time, generally it's one bird for maybe two shells. So it does help. This stuff does help you become a better shooter. But anyway, watch the video and see how the clay, when he pulls the trigger, The barrel's ahead of the clay in all instances, a little bit, sometimes directly at it, but it just depends how much the clay is moving in front of you. Here we go. All right, this last video is about how to fit a shotgun. This is the simplest method I've ever seen how to fit a shotgun. And I think Larry Porterfield, this is an old video, but Larry Porterfield does a great job on explaining how to fit a shotgun and how shotguns are shaped differently and a lot of other stuff. So, but this is a very simple method. You can do it at home. My suggestion is that you do this, but you do it in front of a mirror. So anyway, here we go.
Does your shotgun fit you properly? Let me show you one way to find out. Shotguns don't have sights like rifles, but instead have a front bead and sometimes one in the middle. The beads serve only as a reference when mounting the gun, as a shotgun is pointed rather than aimed. Your eye functions as a rear sight, and the position of your eye is determined by how your cheek fits the stock. The eye should be in perfect alignment down the center of the rib. If it isn't, your pattern won't be where you're looking. Most modern shotguns are designed to fit average shooters, so they have average stock dimensions. This means the stock will have a length of pull of about 14 inches, which is the distance from the middle of the butt pad to the center of the trigger, or front trigger if the gun has two. It will have about 1.5 inches drop at the comb and 2.5 inches at the heel. You can determine these measurements by laying the gun upside down on a table and measuring from the tabletop to the stock. On older guns, like this Colt 1883 side-by-side, the stock will often have a lot of drop and will tend to shoot low. These stocks were designed when shooters shot from a more upright position. There is no standard for shotgun stocks, and dimensions can vary quite a bit. Some modern shotguns, like this Beretta 3901, have a built-in way to adjust the stock dimensions. It has a tapered wedge between the buttstock and the receiver, and a matching washer inside. Changing the orientation of the wedge and the washer will change the drop and also allow the stock to be set up for either right-hand or left-hand shooters. There is one easy and foolproof method to see how your favorite shotgun fits, and you only need a soda straw and some double-sided tape. First, tape the straw to the rib. Then, mount the gun as you normally would, but with your eyes closed. When you open your eyes, you should be looking through the straw. This stock is set a little too high for me, so I'll flip the wedge and washer and try it again. When your eye is perfectly centered in the straw, your shotgun fits. If you notice you shoot better with one shotgun than another, it's probably because one fits you better.
All right, let's get back to the screen. Anyway, let's we'll just go on. So the fitting your shotgun, practicing at a range with clays helps. It's just, bird hunting is not magic. It's just hard work and getting prepared, just like you would get ready for a deer hunt or a elk hunt or a pig hunt. It's all the same. So anyway, anybody have any questions? Eric, did we get any questions in the chat?
We sure did. One of the questions was, what do you recommend for first-time shooters? What type of shotgun, what gauge, and he's wanting to know what barrel.
Well,
What are your
the one
thoughts
thing
on
I
that,
will
Rick?
tell you, a lot of people try to buy home defense shotguns for hunting, and that's not a good thing. Try to get a shotgun that has at least a 26-inch barrel. My suggestion is start out with a 12 gauge. It'll shoot enough lead down or steel down range that you'll be able to get something. Most people, if you can afford a semi-automatic, that's where I would go. You can get them as cheap as $500 now, but most people start with pumps, which are a little more work to shoot because you have to pump it every time you pull the trigger. And so, but they are more economical. You could get them down to $300 new. You can always buy used guns too. Make sure that if I was going to buy my first shotgun today, I would make sure that if I bought it something that was older or a friend had a gun, I would make sure that it had screw and chokes, because then you have a lot more variability. At least a 26 to 28-inch barrel, and a semi if you can afford it, or if you can't afford that, then buy a pump. But that's where I would start.
Great question. Great answer. How about, you're talking about practice makes perfect. How much practice for an average person when they're out on the range before you think they're ready to get rolling with hunting? You think it would be like weeks, months, or years? What are your thoughts?
Well, everybody wants to be perfect, so I guess it could be forever, but it could be the answer. But my guess for most people, and I'll tell you one of the things as a shotgun, as a sporting clays instructor, if you want your effort that you put into going to the range and you want to be more efficient, hire an instructor. Instructors are anywhere between $75 to maybe $80 an hour to maybe $90 an hour, depending on the range. But that instructor will accelerate your learning curve by 3 to 4 times. So in other words, what would take you by yourself 3 or 4 times going to the range, he could teach you the first time you hit the range. So it depends on your budget, depends on your how hard-headed you are. I don't want to spend the money. Or if you're one of those kind of people that just says, I just want to get good, I'll spend the money, I have it, it's okay. It's both sides of the coin is the answer. But my guess is that if you're going to learn by yourself, I would say it's going to take you to be a proficient bird hunter, probably 10 times the range by yourself. And if you have a shotgun instructor, it may be 4. That's the best answer I can give you.
Yeah, that's great. So are there any tips that you have, Rick, for cross-dominant eyed shooters?
That's the $1 million question. Cross dominance is always an issue. The easiest answer is shoot your dominant eye. That's the easiest answer. That's probably the easiest fix. But many people don't want to change hands. And I personally am cross dominant. But the way I had it done is I fixed myself because I had LASIK done in my right eye only, and that made my right eye dominant. So I'm right-handed. I'm right-handed shooter now. But the other way you can fix it, and if you want to just test it, when you're at the range, take a little chapstick, bring a chapstick with you, and look where on your glasses lens, on your safety glasses lens, look where you see the barrel. Put about a 16 millimeter, it's about a little less than a ½ an inch circle right where the barrel is of chapstick on your lens. It will fog the lens so you can't see the barrel, and it makes your right eye dominant. Another trick is to wink your if you're going to shoot cross dominant, wink your dominant eye just before you pull the trigger. That's a hard one because you can't do it consistently, especially with bird hunting. But you can either wink or close an eye, or the other one is to put a piece. If you want something more permanent than the chapstick, you can get frosted Scotch tape and put it right where you put the dot. And then actually they make dots that go on glasses that will cover that dominant eye just where the barrel is, so you don't lose your peripheral vision.
Yeah. So if you're a brand new shotgunner looking to go hunting, where would you suggest buying ammunition, and where would you suggest buying a shotgun? Would you just randomly choose a sporting goods store, or do you have any suggestions on that?
That's a tough one. I used to work in sporting goods stores selling guns, so that's a tough one for me to tell the honest truth. But the honest truth is most of those guys in those stores don't know squat about shotguns. Most of them are pistol and rifle guys. So that's a tough one. Again, my suggestion is go to a shotgun range and talk to an instructor.
Good suggestion.
Because again, if you ever talk to guys in gun stores, they're 99% of them, what do they own? Pistols and rifles, mostly pistols. No shot. Rarely ever do you find a person that shoots clays even for fun in one of those shops. So 99% of them don't know anything about shotgun. They sell you the first one that says, "Oh yeah, that one looks cool."
Interesting. Well, I don't think we have any more questions coming in. Actually, one more. Explain what you mean by eye dominance. What does that mean, Rick?
Okay. There is eye dominance. If you're a shooter and don't know your eye dominance, you better find out quick. And one way to find out is to take and make a circle about the size of a quarter in your two hands, and look at a distant telephone pole or something, 100 feet, 200 feet away, and bring that hand back to the eye that sees the point you're trying to see. That will give you your eye dominance. That's the self eye dominance. Or the other thing is you can hold that size of a quarter with your two hands and close one eye and close the other. One of them will not move and one of them will move. The one that doesn't move is your dominant eye. Because the brain does not see completely bifocally with both eyes. The brain uses one eye that's more dominant than the other. And in most people, and there are center dominant people, and there are eye dominance is not clearly right or left. There is some middle ground between those two, and it's a very complex problem to solve. But as a sporting clays instructor, when you see a student that makes the same mistake every time, you can assume almost every time that it's a dominant issue. Or if you ever see a shooter that when they hold up a shotgun or hold up a rifle, they actually cock their head over the gun to look down on the other eye. So if they're right-handed, they actually look down the gun with their left eye and they cock their head to do that, cross dominance issue. So cross dominance is not something, every shooter, if you're going to shoot anything, you need to learn your eye dominance. One of the first things you need to learn. And then if you're cross dominant, which is about, in men, it's about 15% of the population. In women, it's probably higher up near 20. And it's not always a negative thing, because I tell people, like, don't think it is completely negative. For shooting, it may be negative because you got to switch hands or you got to figure out how to fix it. But with for baseball players, if you're right-handed and you're left eye dominant, guess which eye sees the ball first? Your dominant eye, your left eye, and most good baseball players are cross dominant.
Interesting.
So eye dominance is not something that you can. It's something you have to physically work with somebody on if they have a cross dominance problem. But first thing you need to find out is if you have a cross dominant problem, and there are so much online about it, you can find out on YouTube.
Gotcha. Got a question that just popped up about, can you explain the difference between stamps and how they differ from tags? And I can help you with that. You get stumped, right?
Different from what?
Stamps, like an upland bird stamp. The difference between a stamp and like a tag.
Oh, a stamp and a tag.
Yes.
Okay. Eric, you should be able to answer that one.
I can.
Why don't you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So a stamp is like a validation for a bird stamp. You need a upland bird stamp or a upland bird validation for any upland bird species. Need a stamp or a validation for ducks, for waterfowl. A tag is mostly for like big game, and there's also pig tags. So tags are more appropriate or more applicable for big game species.
And since I'm old, I'll explain the stamp thing. In the old days when they had paper licenses, they actually used to put on your license something that looked like a postage stamp on your license. That was your upland game stamp, and your federal and state wildfowl stamps were physical stamps, actually, that you licked and put on your license, just like a postage stamp.
Right. Well, Rick, we're going to need to close out. And
That's
I just
fine.
wanted to tell you, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your dedication to hunters throughout the state. And thank you for your dedication to the hunter education program. I also want to plug some of Rick's future webinars. And then also he has some clinics that he's working on as well. And so we were talking about coaching. He's going to be doing some shotgun clinics down in the Southern California area. So look on the Advanced Hunter Ed webpage. In the near future, those will be posted, and so you can register for those. With that being said, I want to sign off, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.